You saw a countdown. Great to have you guys here. This is the first video in a series of videos on office hours. So this one's going to be a lot shorter than usual. And it's great to have you guys. I see we got Buho Tries. Thank you for joining us. I see we got Deterno in the chat. Great to have you guys. Feel free to leave comments, say hello. Let me know if the audio is coming in clear. I've got the video feed up over here, which looks good. And I'm just trying to decide where I want to place that. But yeah, let's see. Maybe more right there. Perfect. Hey, hi! Fantastic. So the first thing to note is this is a continuation, so to speak, of a series that I've been doing inside of Discord for the last month or so. Except it is not an official series like it was before. And I love that I can do it on YouTube, which means it's going to be a little bit more open. More people are going to have access to it. You're going to have recordings of it, which is kind of great. If you've got questions for next week, comment on the current one. I don't see all the comments. I can't respond to everything, but I will do my best. So feel free to leave a comment if there's a topic you'd like to see covered, or if there's something you'd like to see expanded upon if you're watching this in the recording. Now, because this is a continuation of that series that I was doing in Discord, this is actually happening right before my final one. And so at the very end of this, anyone who has MHCP access will be able to join me as we jump into Discord for the final official Laex05 office hours. And what is office hours about? It's a chance for you to ask any questions you have. Code blocks, TypeScript, 3D modeling isn't my specialty, but I can answer quite a few questions. And yeah, so we're gonna do that. I'm also gonna just like share tips and tricks, things that might be helpful. It's a very casual, very, very casual. So if you're expecting something structured, it is definitely not that. But yeah, we're gonna do this once a week for the foreseeable future. I will be taking like holidays off, so if you don't see one on Valentine's Day, I saw that's coming up, that's on a Friday. The plan is to do it Fridays, this time for 2 hours, so that's 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific, or 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, look forward to seeing you guys here every week. Now, without further ado, I'm gonna wait for questions to come in the chat. Hey, White Sword, thanks for joining us. Feel free to drop any scripting questions you have or you'd like to have answered. It can be not scripting, it can be really anything. And I'm gonna start by opening up Horizon. So we're gonna open up the MetaQuest link app. There it goes. And we'll go to Library, 3 dots, Start in Desktop mode. Here we go. And let's get that. That seems good. And maybe I'll show you a sneak peek on a new video that's going to be coming out. I don't think it'll be next week, but in about a week and a half, I hope. Let's see, it's in this video, or this world. This is a very complex one, going to have a lot of detail. Very excited for it, but definitely a lot of work. All right, here we are, console. And so, clear, play, jump into preview mode. And so what I'm working on in this next tutorial that we'll be dropping in a week and a half or so is this little user interface that allows people to buy things with real world money, and then with those premium tokens they have purchased, spend them. And so we built a little user interface over here where you can click on a hat. If you don't have it equipped, you can equip it. You can move to the other one. You can equip your other hat. You can see if you've owned it. You can buy hats. You can exit the hat shop. It can do multiple pages. It does 10 items per page. Then you can zoom in and do each item individually. And it uses asset spawning to equip and unequip. The photos of the back of my head is just for comedy. So, hey Osprey, welcome in, welcome in. And then the final thing that I'm working on to finish this series up is a few utilities plus another user interface over here that'll do coloring, so you can change the color of the hat. And then you'll be able to take that and do whatever you want with it. You'll be able to take the scripts or learn from the scripts. It's currently at 11.5 hours. It's an insane tutorial. But I don't think that's the purpose of watching it, though. Like, to be very clear, I think that video... Welcome, Bryce. Oh, right. Sorry. I mean, Deterno. Hello. Could you give me the NPC? No, sorry. I don't think it's meant to be watched in its entirety unless you are a hardcore person who wants to really dive into the code. I expect only a handful of people to actually watch the entire, what will probably be 20 hours when it's done. And instead, what I plan to do is spend 2 hours at the beginning, and I'm not kidding, 2 hours at the beginning to introduce how to utilize the scripts, and then we'll go create the scripts in the last 18 hours. It's an insane sort of tutorial. Whitesword says, I've been using that AI texturing tool, and it has been generating some very interesting blocks. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Will we get more detail about this tool? Probably not. A lot of the times when tools are released, we don't get any information on how they work. They do get developed a little further. Some examples of this is if we look at the AI tool specifically, if you go over to the scripting tool, you'll notice that it has a new feature that was recently added for choosing Llama 3.1 or the Specialist, which is designed for Horizon. And they're like working on 2 different variations. We know nothing really about these. They just kind of silently added this feature. You'll notice the same thing over here for sound effects. You can just do ambient audio or sound effects now. And so like new features are getting adding. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they added a tiling feature to the texture at some point in the future, but for now that's not there. And you know, stuff like that's probably going to be developed in the future. But for now, we really don't get a lot of information. We just kind of have to play with it and figure it out. But if you have a question specifically about something you'd like to use it for or something that you're struggling with, feel free to ask and we can try and experiment with it today. And yeah, if you've just joined us, this is Office Hours with Laex05. And any questions you have or things you'd like to have covered, that is what I am here for. So feel free to ask away, use the chat there, and I'll probably go and dive in on a topic that I think is really cool while I wait for your questions to flow in. And I know this is our first one, so I don't expect everyone to have all their questions prepared, but in the future you can bring your questions on the weekly for this specifically. So while we are waiting for questions, let's head back into Horizon and take a look at something else. Going to go ahead and leave this world and probably create a brand new world for today's office hours. Let's see. Here's office hours 1220. Let's create new world, which will be blank world, custom model import, office hours, and today's date is 01-17-25, and create. For reference, Deterno, I believe you'd asked about the NPC. I can't give you that. I would get thrown out of the program, so I'm sorry. I did, however, ask that they create a teen program, you know, for young teens who want to be in this program. I don't think anything's going to come of it, but I did ask, and I really, really did try. So fingers crossed that somebody's thinking about it. Meta's a very, very slow company. So if there is any work being done, it would take years, at which point you might already be 18. So unfortunately, that's kind of the situation we're in. There are lots of places you can play with TypeScript in the meantime. One of my favorites is TypeScriptLang.com. And this is where I go to play with TypeScript. So when you want to like practice and learn, but you don't have access to the tools, you can come here. This is a simple script that I wrote a long time ago. I don't even know what this does. But basically, you can just come to this website, and we can do console.log, parentheses, and then single text to create a string, hello world. And you can use this to get started. So I'm going to paste that in the chat, and you can go ahead and click on that link to try that code out and try expanding upon it. You could imagine creating a variable, like you could say constant message, constant message equals, and then you could say hello world, and then you could, instead of putting hello world here, put message. And like I said, it's a pretty cool playground. Like, this is some cool stuff, and yeah, feel free to give that a try. I also use this for any of those who are looking for like a tool they can use, you could do something like this, which is really cool. You could say constant random numbers, and you could then say it is a number array, which equals an empty array. And then you could go down here and say while parentheses random numbers dot length is less than 1,000. And then while that is less than 1,000, Shift Alt F to auto format, we can then add another number. So we'd say random numbers dot push, and we can add one by saying math dot floor, which will return a whole number or an integer. And then we can calculate a random number by doing math dot random, and then that's going to create a random number between 0 and 1, which we can then multiply by 1,000, which will give us a random number between 0 and 999 inclusive. And then that's going to create an array of 1,000 numbers. And then when I want to use this in Horizon, I would then just do console.log parentheses random numbers. And that's going to console log it over here after it's done. And I can just copy paste that and use it in my code. And so we'll just hit run. And there you are. There's 1,000 random numbers generated. And I can just copy that by selecting over here and highlighting over to the end, Control C. And then we could run into Horizon and say, create new script called random numbers underscore data. And then 3 dots, open an external editor. And then in VS Code, we can go Control A, oops, yes, I trust the authors, allow, Control A backspace. Then we'd say constant random numbers. And then we would want to describe what it is, which is a number array. And then that will equal, and then we just paste the array of numbers. I like semicolons, so add a semicolon to the end. And there we have it. That is 1,000 numbers available. And we can make that available in all our scripts simply by typing export. And now we have 1,000 numbers of random numbers available to use anywhere in our scripts. Pretty cool. Do you know when the NPC is coming? I do not think it will be going out to the public because it's too dangerous, because you can impersonate. So I would say it's not coming, I'm afraid. I'm sorry to share that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this, Control save, and paste that here. Welcome, Galactic Victoria. Great to have you. And it says my thing was too long. This URL is too long. I'm going to use a shortener. Yeah, and sure, we'll use this one. Control V, shorten URL, copy URL, Control A, backspace, Control V. All right, so that URL will get you to this little dialog box there. So that's kind of fun. Osprey says, why would you do that rather than use the same code in Horizon? I find it's faster, because in Horizon you'd have to attach it to like an entity. You'd then have to run it. You'd have to then do some weird copy paste, because the copy and paste system in Horizon doesn't allow you to just select from the console. You'd have to copy the whole console message and then paste it in a text file to then copy the data out. It's a little bit harder. So that, and I love the fact that you can play with it really quickly. It doesn't require you to start and stop your whole world, especially if you're in a world that's very complex, not just an empty world like this. So I definitely recommend TypeScript Lang over trying to do it in Horizon, even though you could. So it's a good question, Osprey. I'm doing great, Galactic, and it's great to have you. I haven't seen you in the live stream in, it feels like a hot minute, and I'm so glad that you're here. If you guys don't know Galactic Victoria, she's been in my live streams like for the last 3 years. So it's so awesome to get to see her again. So thanks for joining. Let's see. Thinking of using it for training. If you want to expand upon that with any questions you have, Buho, and let me know if I'm mispronouncing your name, but please do let me know if you have any questions about the training and what you're thinking about there. Because that's what this is. This is Office Hours. I'm here to answer any questions you guys have. Feel free to drop them in the chat. We can go through anything from TypeScript, code blocks. We can talk about 3D model importing. And I will do my best. 3D modeling isn't my strong suit, but I do my best there. and all that good stuff there. So let's go ahead and hop back into Horizon. We've got our random numbers, and since we've got random numbers and we don't have anything to use it for, let's go ahead and do something with those random numbers. That's always fun. And let's see. We have a grid, and people are interested in NPCs. Osprey asked a question though. He says, I understand using TypeScript Lang, but specifically the random list at world start. Oh, why wouldn't you do it at world start? Now that, Osprey, is a phenomenal question. That's a really phenomenal question. Thank you so much for clarifying, because that is a really good one. Okay, so if you didn't catch the question is, why would we create a static list of random numbers that isn't actually random, rather than using just randomly generated on world start? Now there is a use case for each of these, and I'm going to give you the use case for the one that is static, because I feel like the random one we all understand. You can use random anywhere you want. But what if you don't want it to be really random? As an example, say you go to Murder Manor, a world I know Osprey and I enjoy very much. In Murder Manor, every day there are daily quests, and those daily quests are predetermined indefinitely. What I did to do that is I generated a list just like that one you saw there of 1,000 numbers, maybe more. And then by using those 1,000 random numbers, they are then manipulated using mathematics to create pseudo-random numbers that generate the quests every day. And so, but what it does by having these random numbers generated is you can say, hey, today I want to run quest number 5, and it's going to show that quest up there. So I'm not doing a good example because the way that it's done in Murder Manor is way more complicated than can be explained with words, but the point is that if you jump into another instance, the daily quest is the same no matter what instance you're in. So let's expand upon that. And again, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We have plenty of time to take all the questions. But yeah, let's take a look at how that might be used. The first thing we're going to need is an empty object to represent a kind of like a data, we'll call this a daily manager. Daily manager. And this will just manage daily stuff. This is an idea. We're going to move it to 0, 0. Control A, 0, 0, 0. Yeah, pretty much everyone that's 18 plus and lives inside the 3 or 4 countries that have been open to, unfortunately. Like it's unfortunately limited, but you can apply using the link in the description of this video. And so the question, if you didn't hear it, was, can everyone use TypeScript? And the answer is mostly. Can I be an editor? I am afraid not. But you can just copy this code if you'd like. Does that need a PPV for cross worlds? If you wanted to use it across worlds, potentially. In this case, we weren't using it across worlds. Tell me more about the idea that you have, and we can definitely explore that. Okay, so we've got our daily manager, and what we're going to do is create a quick script for this daily manager, which will be called daily manager underscore entity. And I call it entity because it's going to be attached to the empty object, which is of type entity. You'll remember that object is what we used to call it in code blocks, and in TypeScript we now call it entity. So now we can attach that entity script. And now that that script has been attached, we can now do stuff in the script. So we'll go 3 dots, open an external editor to edit it in VS Code. I don't like this HC dots, so I'm going to go ahead and delete HC dot and the first import line. And then we can delete the T and component. Retyping the T and component by clicking enter, we will have written this first line here for the imports. And now that we've got our script set up, we now want to choose a random value. Let's go ahead and say, imagine this. We have 5 quest list length. So imagine we have a list of quests. Actually, let's go a step further. I'm going to take this just a couple steps further. I think will be fun. We're going to go and create a new script called quests underscore data. And for now, this is just going to be a list of strings, but you can imagine our quest data being a lot more complex. And so we're going to say export constant quests, and quests is going to be equal to an array of strings. So we're going to say it's a string array, which equals an array. And then by clicking enter in the final square brackets, we can now start defining values. And so the first one will be called quest1. I need to put that in single ticks, so we'll do quest1. And then a comma separates the values. We can then do the second quest, which we'll call another quest. Nice. And then we can do another quest, which we'll call quest3. And you can imagine that having infinite numbers of quests. So now we need to determine which quest is for today. And so on start, we want to console.log which quest we are. So we can go to quests and then say item 0 as just an example to prove that this console logs the quest. And so now when I hit play, we will see on the console that the quest 1 is the first one that gets printed to the console. There it is, quest 1. And now that we've proved that this is working, we can now generate a random value by using our random numbers. Now, what we need to do is figure out the index. And so we're going to say constant index equals 0. And by creating this variable, we can now replace the number 0 with index. And now we need to determine index. Now, index needs to be within the index of the quest's length. So by taking 0 modulus and then doing quest.length, this makes sure that it stays within the realm of the number of quests. So say we have this number as 4. There is a length of 3. 4 mod 3 returns 1 because it takes 4, divides it by 3, and returns the remainder. And the remainder is 1 because 4 divides by 3 once. So you remove 3, and then you're left with just the 1. And so what we can do then is say if we go to the random numbers, so we go random numbers, and then inside of random numbers, we want to choose the value that correlates with today. So we use square brackets. And similarly to how we needed to keep this within the value of the quest length, we use another modulus here, and we do random numbers.length. And so now that we've kept this within the value of the random numbers, we now need to supply today. Now today is calculated by using date.now, which is going to return the day, the number of milliseconds since the universal starting time. And if we take that value, I'm going to put it in parentheses, we're going to do some math to it by dividing it by a value. We're going to also need to put it in another set of parentheses. So we're going to divide it by the number of milliseconds in a day. So that's 24 hours in a day multiplied by 60 minutes in an hour multiplied by 60 seconds in minutes multiplied by 1,000 milliseconds in a second. And then that's going to calculate the number of days, but it has a decimal place. And so we need to remove the decimal place by doing math.floor to remove the decimals. And so this is going to choose today from the random numbers. And then every day it will progress forward by 1. And then it will choose the relative quests based on random. So a little complicated there. Maybe let's separate that into a couple separate parts. So let's choose constant today's random number. Let's try that first, which equals this section right here. Control X, Control V, and semicolon. So now we can put today's random number here. And I missed a bit of this, didn't I? This goes Control X right here. Okay, so today's random number is calculated, and then the index is by taking today's random number modulus quests. And so now we need to figure out what today is. So we can say constant today is equal to, and we're just breaking this into smaller pieces so you can easily see how it works. And we calculated that here with math.floor. So we're going to just Control X this, put in today is, and then pasting that here. We can remove the extra set of parentheses now, semicolon at the end. Okay, so now we can see that today is by taking date.now, dividing it by this value, which we need to put inside of parentheses. And that's going to return the number of days. We then use math.floor to remove the decimal place. That gives us what today is. We can then take today, throwing it into the random number array, modulus the length, keeps it within the index. We then return the index, or then we get the index by taking today's random number. Okay, it's a lot of math. I love math. So anyway, now that we've got that done, this is going to return a random quest. We don't know which one. We just go ahead and hit clear, and we'll go ahead and hit play in just a second. And you can have infinite number of quests, well, up to 1,000, right? Because we have, so you can have a lot of quests. We'll then hit play, and you can see that returned quest 1. And now we can go to tomorrow. And so if we take today is, and we add 1 to this, so plus 1, we can see what tomorrow's would be. And so we'll go ahead and hit play once that's finished compiling. So today was quest 1, and tomorrow would be another quest, as it turns out. We can hit stop and play again to see that that always returns another quest whenever we create a new world during that day. And the next thing we can do is we can check out what like a week from now is, 7 days from now, plus 7. And that's more or less how this works. And the problem is, of course, that it's possible to get the same day to happen multiple days in a row. And so that's why there's a ton more math going into the one that's in Murder Manor, because we check to make sure that it can't be the same 2 days in a row and a bunch of other crazy things that are going on there. But this is the basic principle of how that works, and pretty neat. Okay, with that done, I'm going to go ahead and look at your guys' questions in the chat. Let's see. Can everyone use TypeScript? We talked about that. Does that need a PPV? I asked for some more clarity there. Booho Charles, let me know if you wanted to know more about PPVs. Be happy to talk more about that. We talked about not being an editor. I wrote a script in code blocks that when player presses button, the trapdoor will become non-collidable and invisible, and an object will fall. I wrote a script in code blocks that when a player presses button, trapdoor disappears, and an object falls. Pretty cool, love it. From the ceiling, but the problem is that the object doesn't fall through the ceiling, it just dangles there. That's curious. I'm wondering if that's related to a, like a collider bug. Let's go ahead and test it out here. We can make something very similar. So we're gonna go ahead and clear. We'll leave this code in here, that's fine. But what we want to do is create the same sort of description you made. So we're going to start by taking our shapes, pulling out a cube. We'll imagine that this cube represents the trapdoor in the ceiling. We'll set the position to be at 0, 5, 0, and then maybe we'll go forward on the z-axis by 5, and then we'll go down by a couple to 3. We'll change the scale to be a little bit more like, that. Let's go into preview mode and see what that looks like. Nice. Okay, so that's our trapdoor. And now what we need to do is make it so it disappears. So we need to have stuff next to it. So Control D, and we'll slide this one over. And it's hard to slide and snap things on the desktop editor. It's one of the biggest drawbacks of using the desktop editor. But that's pretty close. Control D, slide that over to here. There's definitely some like ways to get better at it, but very difficult. Okay, so now that we got those two set up, what I like to do is select both at the same time, turn on rotation, turn on snapping, change it to 90 degrees, hit Control D, and then rotate that, and there we go. We've got our other two angles done. And then we can do our sliding tool again, Control D, slide that over to here, get that lined up nicely. Very close. For desktop editor stuff, I'm definitely not worried about it being perfect or efficient for this demo, but okay, so we've got our ceiling tile here, and this is our trapdoor. So the first thing we're gonna do is create a script for our trapdoor. I'm gonna go ahead and call this trapdoor underscore entity. There it is. And we'll open that in external editor. And I don't like HC dot, so I get rid of it right away. Boop, and backspace T to retype T. And so our trapdoor needs to disappear after delay. So we're gonna call this delay start. It's a terrible name for what this is actually doing. Oh, we wanted to use a trigger, I suppose. Let's call this trigger, player enter trigger. That's what they call it. Player enter trigger. There we go, which is received with a player. So we'll type player : player. And then in properties, we need to know about the trigger. And so let's go to here, and we're going to type trigger colon curly braces type colon prop types dot entity. And then that is the trigger that we're going to be using. So the trapdoor needs to know about the trigger. And then we need to connect the trigger enter event. To do that, we use pre-start. And in pre-start, we're going to type connect code block event. And then we're going to connect it from this dot props dot trigger. And the event is the code block events dot trigger player enter trigger. There it is. And then we're going to connect that to our local one, which we do by typing parentheses player to create an arrow function. And then we can call player enter trigger parentheses, pass in the player parameter. I like semicolons, so I add one here and there. And now we need to verify that trigger is defined by using an if parentheses props, control Z, props dot trigger. So that just verifies that we did reference the trigger on the properties panel, otherwise it won't do anything. And then I also wanted to change the color of this trapdoor on world start. So we're going to say this dot entity dot as parentheses mesh entity, and then dot I think it's called tent, or what is it? It's there's a property for this. It's not color, which is surprising, I know. It is style. That's it. Style dot tent color dot set parentheses to new color parentheses. And we're going to make this brown, which is orange, a dark orange, so 0.3 comma 0. Orange is red plus green, right? Yeah, 1.25 and then comma 0.05. All right, so we got a nice brown there, and that will set the color. And then we also need to set the tent strength so that it actually uses the tent strength, which we're going to set to 1. And the tent brightness can actually change the which is just called brightness. We'll also change how bright this is, so we'll change that to 0.5. That'll make it darker, maybe too dark even, but we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so that's going to make it so it's obvious which one is the trapdoor. We've got the player enter trigger. Now when player enter trigger, we want to make it disappear, so we say this dot entity dot visible dot set parentheses false. And then we want to do this dot entity dot collidable dot set parentheses false. There we go. All right, so we turned off the collidability when they press the trigger. And we could reset this, but we're not going to, just for today's little test here. And what we need to do is put an object on top of this. So first things first, I'm going to take this one that we have not changed yet, press Control D to duplicate it, slide it up. And this one is going to be our falling cube, which we want to make cuboid. So we're going to shrink it down a little bit. So shrinking on this axis, expanding on this axis. We'll let this one remain white. That is a-okay. I would like to change the color, but it isn't easy to do. We do want to make sure that it has the properties for motion interactive and make it physics only. And then use gravity. Perfect. And that is set up to go. So now when we hit play world, we should see that fall, and it does. Perfect. And then we can click on the trapdoor now and attach the trapdoor script. So there it is. Trapdoor entity script is attached. We now need to make sure to move a copy of this down. Let's use this one here, Control D. Slide this one to route here, and that's going to represent the trigger. So when you step on that, the trapdoor will open and fall. So now we need to reference a trigger, so gizmos, grab out a trigger gizmo. We're going to paste this or copy the position of this here, copy position. Clicking the trigger, we can then paste position, which moves it into position. We can then slide that up to nicely fill that space, perfect. And now clicking on the trap door again, which we're going to go ahead and name trap door. And then we can reference the trigger by going to here and selecting the trigger right there. Perfect. All right, now clicking play, we can give this a shot. In preview mode, we can see that we got our little not so, it's more tanny. It's like it got too much green in it. But anyway, so we're gonna walk into this, and would you look at that? It doesn't fall. Not gonna lie, I find that quite shocking too. This should have worked, right? Like that should have caused this thing to fall, right? I'm pretty sure that's how that used to work. Do we have any worlds where we used to have something like that set up that we can go and test? Maybe it's a new bug that's recently happened. I'm not sure. But yeah, would you look at that? It doesn't work. Object doesn't fall through the ceiling, it just dangles there. Let's see if there's a way we can change that. Because, yeah, for sure that should have fallen. Like, we turn off collidable and hit play. It falls right through. That definitely should work. We might need to jostle this guy. Just a little bit. Like, let's try just something really quick here. We're going to know about the falling cube, so Control-C, Control-V to duplicate this. We're going to call this the falling cube. Press Control-Save. And then on player enter trigger, we're going to say props dot falling cube dot position dot set to props dot falling cube dot position dot get. So we're just going to move it to the exact position that it's already at. So we're not even moving it. We're just saying, hey, we're doing stuff with you. We can then say, yeah, that's okay. Control save. And now we need to reference the falling cube on the trapdoor. So selecting down here, clicking here, we can type in FA to get falling cube. There it is. Now we'll give that a shot and see if that works. And then I'll read the rest of the messages. Sorry, guys. Let's give that a shot. Here goes nothing. Hey, that's it. So all you have to do is move it to the position of self, and it falls. Ta-da! Cool beans. All right. Glad we found a solution. And that should work in code blocks too. I don't see any reason that wouldn't work in code blocks. Let me see what other questions we got. Can I be a tester? Do you want to be an editor? I can't make you a tester, and I don't, yeah, not right now, sorry. Maybe on a different world. Do I want to be editor? Not particularly. I'm on too many worlds right now, so it's just kind of like overwhelming to have too many in the menu, and it starts breaking down too. Could this be like a daily quest sign in, and then I guess what I'm trying to ask, is there a way to start it in one world and the next day they sign in for the same daily quest in world 2 and sign up for... Yes, absolutely. You could totally do this across all your worlds. Yeah, absolutely. So let's demo it. Let's see how we could do that. Let me write it down. So we want to do a cross world questing. Okay. So let me know, White Sword, if that helped with your question about the falling object. Okay, so going back to where we were earlier, we had the quest data here, where we had our quests, and to make it... Oh, so maybe it's a problem that's existed for a while, Osprey. Thank you for letting me know. I definitely would recommend reporting it, but I don't know if there's anything that can do. It might just be built into like a Unity system issue where it's been like, once it's frozen in place, it needs an update to realize that it needs to fall again. Okay, so in terms of the daily quests, right here we found out what is today. We found out what today's random number is. We discovered which quest we wanted to do. Now let's assume that the player does the quest. Now, we're not doing anything like that today, but we have player enter world, and so when the player enters the world, we're gonna mark them as having completed the quest for today. What this means is we need to know what today is, so we're gonna save this outside of start, which we can do by simply selecting all of this, pressing Control X, and pasting it right there. Now today is stored. You can also make this read-only if you don't want it to change. So if you want your instance to have to die, there's also this reality that in a lot of worlds where I have this type of coding, when player enters world, I check if it's a new day and update this. So I don't usually make that read-only. But anyway, we got today is. We don't need this const anymore. Now today's random number is another thing that would be set. So we go Control X and paste that right here. We do need to make sure to type this dot in front of it to reference this today is, because previous today is was just today is, but now because it's a part of the class, it's now a this dot because it's inside of this thing. So the class is a this. And then you'll see that here where we're getting the index, and that gets us the index of the quest, which we're also going to store outside of the start so that we have it available everywhere. There we go. There's index, which will also need this dot. There we go. And then we have console.log quest this dot index. Okay, so now on world start, we get to know what quest has been selected for today. And then player enters the world. We now want to, in this case, we're going to pretend like entering the world is all that it takes to complete the quest. We want to now update which quest they've completed. So we can either use one of these things, depending on what you want to do. So I would recommend using a JSON persistent variable. And so let's get back into Horizon, clear, and we're going to go to our PPVs, variable groups, and we're going to add one, ideally one that's already been created, because apparently there's a limit of like 150 of these. They just put out a warning yesterday not to have more than 150 right now because there's a bug and they're trying to fix it. So do I have one for classes? It doesn't appear that I do. Let's create a new one then called office hours, and we'll just use this in all office hours going forward. Office hours, PPVs. All right, create. So now that we got our office hours PPVs, we can now add a variable to this, which we want to make a JSON object. Pretty simple. And this is going to be called quests completed. Or actually, let's do this as days completed. So we want to know what days the player has completed. So we'll go ahead and press create. And now that we have days completed, we can then use this inside of our script. So we'll go to player enter world. Ideally, we want to define what the type is for this for this PPV, and this really gets into kind of like some more of the complex scripting. I'd recommend checking out player stats and player data video. I can get a link to that if anyone's curious. We're going to go ahead and create a, we'll call this PPV_defs. So we need to define what the PPV is. We'll open an external editor. Now this PPV is going to be defined to be never changed. So this is like set it and forget it. And so we're going to type export type, and it's going to be called days. What did we name that? We named it, let's go back to variable groups. It was named days completed. So we'll do capital D, days completed, and then days completed is going to equal a JSON object with one value called days completed, and that will be a number array. And there we go. Now you could do quest completed, and every time they finish a quest, add it to this array, and it could be a list of strings. We've chose to do numbers, but theoretically you could do more than that. You could even do two things like quest completed and numbers. We're just going to stick with the one though. So now that we've got this definition for what days completed is, we can now utilize that over here when the player enters the world. So we're going to say constant days completed equals world dot persistent storage dot get player variable parentheses for the player that entered the world. We want to get their persistent variable, which is going to be the name here, which we'd given it. So that was called office hours PPVs : days completed. We got to put that in a string. So say office hours PPVs : days completed. There we go. And now that we got the name of the variable, this is either going to return as a days completed or a null or an undefined. Now Now it's only going to report it as a null, but it could be undefined too. So now that we've got this set up, we want to first know if it is a null, we need to create a default value. And so we say if parentheses days completed triple equals null or days completed triple equals undefined, then we need to set it to be something. So let's change this from a const to a let so that we can override it. And now we can say days completed equals an empty JSON object, which we know is of type days completed. So it has the property days completed colon, I don't think that's right. Check PPV defs. Oh, we did call it days completed. Okay, that's fine. Days completed, which is going to be an empty array, and then comma, and now days completed is defined for sure. We can then utilize that right here and say, okay, now that we have a days completed, we want to set today as completed. So we say days completed dot push is how we add to the list or array. And then parentheses, the value we want to add is today's number. Today is. And so we'd use today is. And because every day is a unique day, we can do that. Oops, Control Z. We want to do that right here. Today is. And then what we also want to do is make sure that we're not adding this twice. So we'd say if parentheses does not, so using the exclamation point is the not operator, then we can say days completed dot includes parentheses this dot today is. And so this verifies that we're not adding it more than once. So as they enter the world or enter any other worlds, it's only added one time. And then you'll have a list of every day the player has played, and you can see if they've been playing multiple days in a row and give rewards based on that or anything else you want to do, which is pretty cool. It'll also tell you how many unique days the player has played, which is also super cool. So a lot that you can do with that just simply there. And then once we've set that value, we need to update the persistent storage. So we call world.persistentStorage.setPlayerVariable for the player who entered the world. And then the value is this same string value here. So we'll go ahead and copy that. Control C and Control V and then comma. And then we need to update the value with the days completed value. And like that, we are done. Now, would highly recommend checking out the player stats player data video if you want to do anything more complex with this, because this is just like scratching the surface on this stuff. But what we can now see is by doing console.log here, console.log, we can then do days completed. We can now see what is stored inside of the player's persistent variable. So let's go ahead and try it out. Clear and clear and clear and play. And now when we jump into preview mode, you'll see, that was weird, nothing happened. Oh, I forgot to attach the script to something, didn't I? What did I miss? Oh, we forgot to use pre-start. Apologies, my forgetfulness. Pre-start is where we're going to connect the player enter world method. And so we need to say connect code block event from this dot entity. The event is code block events dot world player enter world. And then we connect that by using an arrow function, typing player, arrow, curly braces, player enter world, parentheses, player, and then I like semicolons, so I put one here and there, Control S to save, and like that, we should be working now. Let's go ahead and clear one more time, and play, and preview. There we are. And we did get an issue there, so I'll have to read what's up with that. It says, can't get value for office hours, was deleted or never existed. I might have mistyped this. Let's check the variable name. We might also have to leave the world and come back. I remember that being an issue. Office hours PPVs. Office hours PPVs. Days completed. Days completed. It looks like I spelled everything correctly, so I believe we just need to leave and come back. So let's go back to, and this is just one of those weird Horizon quirks / bugs where you just have to know it to know that you need to leave and come back. So we'll give that 1 minute while I read your guys' messages and see what's up. All right. Osprey says, had a similar, oh yeah, we already read that. Laex05 Topalov, great to have you, says, what do you do for a living to provide for yourself? This is what I do. Is that crazy? It's pretty crazy, huh? White Sword says, woot woot. Yes, that does help. I'm just going to try copying that code and put it in the world. Awesome. Fantastic, Vuho. What do you think is the meaning of life? Man, this is getting deep. Oh yeah, let me rub you the link. And I'll try to answer the meaning of life as we do. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's a surprising question to get. Let's see, where's the data video? Live streams and player data. Copy link and paste. All right, there you are. The meaning of life. I don't know that I have an answer to that question. It's really thrown me for a curve. I do my best to be good, positive. If you really want to know, I like positive energy. I like love, caring for other people. Do my best to do that every day. That's why I educate. I love teaching and sharing my knowledge with as many people as I can. If we go to like super otherworldly views, I have a weird hypothesis that I like that helps me settle with the world, which is that we're in like a giant microwave. And if you've ever put a grape inside of a microwave oven, it creates plasma. I've never done it. I've just seen YouTube videos, but basically a grape inside of a microwave creates plasma. So my theory is we're inside of a giant grape. There's plasma being shot in, which creates all the energy in the world and the universe. And so, I like to believe there's a creator, whatever that means. And so something outside of here is bigger and brighter and knows more than us. And I like to imagine that at the end of the universe, when all the parallel universes collapse and we all of the things that we've thought, and every human and every animal, all of our brains get compressed into one giant super entity. And we're all just like the training, like the literal AI training data for like a god, basically. That's at least my life thoughts, if you really want to know. I don't know that I fully believe it, but I like to think it. I think it's nice to imagine that we all get to be one person at the end of it all. So, all right, now let's head back in where we should see the script working after that weird one. Apologies. All right, so if I'm correct, which I hope I am, when we jump into the world, we should see this work. And it worked that time. Fantastic. So now we can see that we completed day 20,105. So there's been 20,105 days since the epoch. And what we can do is simulate coming in on a second day. Remember how we were able to simulate the second day by coming up to today is and adding 1 at the end. So by doing +1, we were able to simulate tomorrow. And so we can go ahead and try this out real quick. And what we'll see is this list is just going to keep getting longer and so on. So we'll go ahead and hit play, jump into preview mode, and the scripts didn't finish compiling. Escape, and then jump into preview mode again. There we go. Now we can see both days are down there. We can jump in again to see that it doesn't change anything. We can also simulate coming in a week later. So maybe you didn't come back every day. You came back 7 days later. And go ahead and see that. Aw, thank you so much, Galactic. I love the unicorn. That's awesome. Clear, and go ahead and jump into preview mode now. And now we can see there are 3 days on the list. And if we look at that, we've got 105, 106, and 112. And we can start imagining using those numbers to determine a lot of information about the player, their play frequency, if you want to give them a reward for playing 3 days in your world. If you want to do 2 days in a row as a bonus, you can do stuff like that. So there's a lot you can do with just this little bit that we've touched and scraped the surface of. Yeah, so pretty neat. All right. Any final questions for today before we jump into our next little bit? So if you've just joined us in the last half an hour, I probably haven't mentioned this. This is the very first episode of Laex05's Office Hours. I'll be doing this every Friday on YouTube at the same time, so that's 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And normally these are going to be 2 hours. Today it's only 1 hour because I have to go back to the official version, which is my final official version. Sorry, I don't know what to call it. But my meta-sanctioned office hours that I've been doing for the last couple months are ending today, and I'm about to go do the final version of that. So if you have access to the MHCP, you can go ahead and join me in Discord in the coffee channel there. And if you don't have access to the MHCP, there is a link in the description so you can apply. If you're under 18 or in a country that hasn't been added yet, I apologize. There are more countries being added this year. I am petitioning behind the scenes for the young teens. I wish you guys had access too. And I will continue doing that as much as I can. But yeah, any final questions before we jump over there? I'll give us another like 5 minutes, and then I need to transition all my equipment. And then next week we'll do another 2 hours. And I really appreciate you guys coming out today for this awesome office hours. I've had a blast getting to show you guys some cool tricks. And next week, feel free to bring your questions. If you have anything you're getting stuck on during the week, this is just one way that I can give back to you guys and share a little bit of the knowledge that I've gained. Which branch of philosophy do you think is closest to you? I don't know, I'm sorry. I don't study philosophy. I study code, so I know numbers and math mostly. If there's one that's close to math and numbers, it might be me. White Sword says, can I get a copy of the script? Absolutely. White Sword, are you going to be in the... I need to make... Okay, we're going to do a thing. We're going to do a thing. I feel like I'm a Dora Explorer character, and I'm like singing the Dora Explorer song, but it's like, do a thing, we're going to do a thing. I don't know, it's weird. But we're going to create a new folder inside of the Vidyuu Assets. There's a link in the description for this. And if I create this new folder, we can call this 000 office hours. And then in these office hours, I will drop the scripts from every week's office hours. And then the dating method we were doing before here was 2024 dash then the month and the year. Okay. So we're going to create a new folder for today's date, which is 2025-01-17. And then I'll dump all those files into this folder. Okay, so we'll go to scripts, 3 dots, settings, open scripts folder in Explorer, and then we'll drag and drop those in. That's fair. That's totally fair. All right. Selecting all the scripts from today. And dragging and dropping. Come on. Come on there, little buddy. And drag and drop. All right, there they are. Those are live right now. You can go into the link in the description for the Vidyuu Assets, go into office hours, and you will find all those scripts available right now. And we'll continue doing that every week. So any scripts we develop, you guys are going to have access to, which is going to be a lot of fun. So I'm glad we were able to set that up nice and easy. You're in for it now. I'll make a list for next week. I appreciate it. I literally am so excited and so grateful. I hope anyone watching this now who's able to make it next week takes advantage too. If there's things that are a little out of scope, we can potentially think about doing some of those in a later video. So like the video I'm currently working on, I showed a little bit at the beginning of this, is like a 20-hour scoped video. So if you ask a question that's too hard, Vuho, I will I'll respectfully let you know and maybe write it down. I've got a list of tutorials and things that I want to build. So anything that's just not going to fit inside an office hours, we can definitely save for later. All right, guys, without further ado, I'm going to jump into the coffee channel in MHCP Discord. If you'd like to join me over there, I would be grateful to have you. And I will see you next week here on YouTube for office hours again. Bye!